Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for north central Minnesota. Production funding for Lakeland Currents is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Online at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, friends. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Thanks for joining the conversation, and thanks for your ongoing support of Lakeland Public TV. Nearly every community in our region is home to a handful of civic and service organizations, from the Lions Club to Sertoma to Rotary. And here to help us understand the role of Rotary, both here in our communities as well as abroad, is District Governor of our district, longtime Rotarian, and friend of the show, Bob McLean. Bob, welcome to the show, and thanks for making time.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to see you again. And my first question is, can you tell us, if we zoom out a little bit, what exactly is Rotary and what's its history?
Well, Rotary is, I would call it an international fellowship. It is in 220 countries around the world, and that's more than the United Nations. And there are 1.2 million members, and we make up 35,000 clubs around the world. So we are pretty much on every continent, and we have a broad reach on every spectrum. And it started actually as a fellowship. Paul Harris was the founder, and he was a small town guy, moved to Chicago, and he really missed the fellowship of small towns. So he started meeting with just a small number of professionals, and they called it Rotary because they take turns going from one office to the next. And so that's where the term Rotary came from. But from that, they started to develop, some mutual interest, mutual support, which included wanting to do, good in their community. So it started as a fellowship, and it became one of the largest volunteer organizations in the world over time.
Interesting. And when did Paul Harris create this organization? Was it 50 years ago?
That was back in the it was 100 years ago plus.
100 years ago.
Yep.
Okay. Now, Bob, I understand you're the newly elected district governor. And I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about the geography that you govern? Is it just Minnesota, part of Minnesota?
We have the unique distinction of being one of the largest geographic districts in North America. We cover just a touch of Ontario, so Thunder Bay and Nipigon, so follow the northern part of Lake Superior. And then we go down as far south as Little Falls. We have just a little bit of Wisconsin, and then all of northern Minnesota and all of North Dakota. So geographically, it's a substantial territory.
Are there many districts that are international in that way, or is that unique to your district?
It is quite unique. We are one of the very few that has clubs in more than one country. In fact, it was rather fun when I was at the International Assembly meeting with the other 530 district governors from around the world when we were being trained. Part of the tradition is to share pins, district pins. And I have this unique pin that has the United States and Canada on it. And it was fun to be able to share that with them, because for most of them, they just have their country. So it is unique.
Okay. I was wondering if you could tell our viewers about the FourWay Test. That, those axioms, of course, are words to live by. And I was wondering if you could share those with us.
I'd be happy to. The FourWay Test was actually designed not for Rotary, but for a business situation. There was a guy by the name of Herbert Taylor, who was an early Rotarian, and he was a very successful business person that was brought into a situation where an organization was really struggling during the Great Depression with some labor issues. And he decided that it was really important to get everyone at the table and on the same page. And so through that, he created a very, very simple system, and it's called the FourWay Test. And it is, of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? So when you think of that as a simple compass, a great way to navigate through issues, from a labor standpoint, it was brilliant. But when I look at it from a standpoint of, dealing with friends from other countries through Rotary, or dealing with, if you would, our local government's political issues, if the FourWay Test was more pervasive across our culture, I think we'd have a much happier culture everywhere.
Interesting. Now that four-way test, is that international? You said that Rotary's in 220 countries. So is that same four-way test translated to all the languages that are used?
Across the entire world. In fact, you could say it's part of the reflection of Rotary's 5 primary values, integrity being one of them. So when you're working with a Rotarian anywhere in the world, you at least hope you're going to have a much better dialogue with them because they know the 4-way test. And part of the goal is to for each of us to uphold each other to that 4-way test. So if I'm talking to someone from Haiti or Guatemala or Taipei, I would expect to be able to conduct myself with them the same way I would if I was talking to someone with Fargo. That we're going to honor each other, respect each other, and respect the work that we're doing, recognizing that that may be unique in the world, but it's an important part of being in Rotary.
That's really interesting, that mutual accountability that you just mentioned. I wasn't really aware of that aspect of interacting with other Rotarians.
I think that is one of the most important things. In fact, I remember years ago, post 9/11, the Rothmeyer Center had a forum to talk about where do we go from here. And the first time I really got a good explanation of the 4-way test was from a past district governor, Hans-Peter Borgsworth. A question had come up when we were on a panel together, and he was asked, how do we build relationships internationally? And he immediately jumped up and explained the 4-way test. And I thought, what a brilliant application. If we could apply that to every sovereign nation and recognize whether we are friend or foe, if we could conduct ourselves in a manner that addresses the 4-way test, all nations would be in a much better position.
Indeed. Well, normally we would be having this conversation in person, but of course, on account of COVID, we're doing so remotely. And I'm curious how that's affecting Rotary, right? So the governor of Minnesota recently tightened restrictions, and I'm wondering, how is that playing out in our communities and the weekly or monthly gatherings that you have?
That's a great question. There's meeting in person to me is always the gold standard. I mean, you build relationships in many different ways, but when you can meet in person, that is really, such a plus. That said, not meeting at all isn't really much of an alternative. And very early on, our district made available to every club in our district the professional version of Zoom. And so we wanted to be sure that clubs were able to continue to meet. We didn't force it upon them, but every club had the opportunity to continue to meet in Zoom. And so with that, we actually found in our little club, you've been to Central Lakes Rotary before, we found an improvement in our attendance in March and April. And that was in part because, we have a lot of snowbirds in our club. And so when they were in quarantine in Florida and Arizona, I think they thought, well, I can at least, tune into our club in Pequot Lakes and see what's happening. So for many clubs, Zoom has been, really a godsend. But the other thing that I found for Rotary International, and a wonderful example, because of Zoom, you can bring in amazing speakers. And Little International Falls, with their club president, Ashley Hall, invited the past Rotary International president to speak to her club. And he did. Barry Razin out of the Bahamas, joined in on a Zoom meeting. And this could have never happened in person. Not a chance. But he was there just like you and I are right now. Just visiting as if, we're next door neighbors. And it was fascinating to see the connectivity that we have internationally. And I think our district did a very good job of helping clubs stay connected. But Rotary, when you think of how huge it is to make that transformation and do it so quickly, they did an outstanding job. Because now with Rotary International, board members are meeting monthly rather than quarterly because they can. If you brought people together internationally, you couldn't afford to do it more than quarterly. But now they can meet monthly. They meet very regularly. And I look at the benefit that we have with the wonderful speakers that we have had come into our organization through Zoom. It's been really exceptional. And just a side note, a personal note for myself, I think, as you know, I'm deaf in my left ear, and I wear a hearing aid in my right ear. In Zoom, I hear everybody. When you're in a large meeting, I hardly hear anybody. So there's certain benefits that have definitely come from it. That said, to me, in person is clearly the gold standard. But
Sure.
I'm glad that we were able to step up very quickly and make the electronic form of meeting together available. And I think that's helped a lot.
I've really enjoyed learning some of the silver linings of COVID. We're all finding ways to make the most of this situation, of course. So it sounds like Rotary is continuing to meet and using the tools at our disposal. So even small community Rotaries are potentially still meeting regularly via Zoom.
Exactly. And that, a lot of it does come down to, having a local champion in the club who feels comfortable setting it up and getting it rolling. And that's the case for, I think, most anything. But,
Sure.
for many clubs, they have actually found it as an advantage to be able to reach out to a population that maybe they hadn't reached before. There's the younger group that is far more inclined to, be comfortable meeting electronically, and would probably rather do that than have to make, a morning breakfast every week or a noon lunch every week. So there's
Sure.
a give and take in all of that. But with that, I think it also speaks to one of the outcomes from Rotary's recent strategic planning initiative. One of the 4 priorities they had set was increasing their ability to adapt. And this was written before COVID, but boy, that's definitely been put to the test. But it is a priority for Rotary. And, as I shared when I was visiting with the president of Rotary International at that International Falls meeting, because of COVID, that kind of forced Rotary 10 years ahead of schedule as far as connecting electronically. We didn't have a choice, and so we just did it.
Well, interesting. That's a perfect segue, actually, to my next question, Bob. As you mentioned, I've been to no more than a dozen Rotary meetings in my life. And my impression has been that it's not a particularly diverse group in terms of age and ethnicity, at least here in our region. What's your impression?
Well, I think that's a fair assessment. And I think that is, again, one of the priorities for Rotary. It's interesting you should mention that, because in those 5 values that I mentioned in reference to integrity, diversity is one of the 5 values. But I think for a long time, a lot of Rotarians looked more like me than a lot of the population. And what I have seen change, and I think is something we are strongly encouraging to make that change, is looking at diversity of population. One great example is just in 2 years, the very first woman president of Rotary International will be inducted. Jennifer Jones from Ontario is going to be the first Rotary president. And it just happens in the same year, Kay Biga from Duluth will be our district governor. So we start to see that change, that shift in the makeup of Rotary. But from a diversity standpoint, I think regionally, there's so much more we can do. Internationally, the population of Rotary, the demographics of Rotary, there are as many, if not more, individual members of Rotary in Asia as there are in the Western Hemisphere. And so from an international standpoint, it is definitely embracing a broad population. That 220 countries really does span the globe. But within that, we continue to want to be accessible as much as possible to a very diverse population, including age and gender.
Sure. So if it's an international organization, it's certainly diverse by definition then.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you just mentioned that the first woman international president, correct? President of Rotary International will be inaugurated shortly. Is that correct?
In 2 years.
In 2 years.
Yes.
That's remarkable, because did I read correctly that it wasn't until 1989 that the bylaws officially and formally allowed women to participate? Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. It was in the 80s. I don't know if it was 89 or 88, but it was in that time frame. And so there's been some magnanimous change in Rotary and the appearance of Rotary. Even in our structure of meetings, there's a significant push to be more creative in how we open up Rotary to the world. For a long time, it was expected that you would have perfect attendance. And in this day and age, that's really a challenge. It's a challenge for people to be able to make a noon lunch or a breakfast meeting. So now we have clubs that are meeting, you could say a happy hour club. There are clubs that are meeting strictly by electronic. So my wife, Terry, for example, is a member of the E-Club for Ending Human Trafficking. It's a group of people that it's a collective effort between 3 different districts but it includes members from the United Kingdom and Australia, because there's no restriction in terms of the physical nature of being able to participate. So Rotary is definitely opening its doors to finding new ways of providing access to people who really feel a call to be of service.
Are you seeing more young Americans join Rotary?
In part. In fact, there again, there's an element of Rotary called Rotaract, and that had primarily been the college-based group or young professionals. And that is becoming more and more a part of the mainstream of Rotary as well. And I think one of the reasons that we're looking at new and creative ways of opening avenues to join Rotary is that, we recognize, I'll look at myself as an example. I didn't join Rotary until 20 plus years ago, but those first 20 years of my career, I just couldn't have considered it with, the busy schedule we had with our 4 kids and with my career, the way that Rotary was conducted at that time. Today, I could easily be a part of Rotary if I was, thinking back 25 years ago. There'd be so many more avenues for me to join Rotary today than there was at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, we live in a arguably divided country right now. And I'm curious if you see that within Rotary chapters, or are Rotarians able to genuinely look beyond and act beyond that? Or do you see that divisiveness emerge in the local chapters?
I feel fortunate that, part of the guidelines of Rotary is that we are very deliberately non-political and non-religious. And with that, it is not that we are anti-political or anti-religious, but we recognize that the makeup of our organization is very broad. And so in the same club, and I'll use St. Cloud as an example, in St. Cloud, you have Christians, Jewish, and Muslim people in the same club. And they do that in such a respectful manner. I've been to their club when they have provided the opportunity for a Muslim prayer before the beginning of the meeting, rather than Christian or a Jewish prayer. I look at the political side, and it is an environment where going to the 4-way test, we want to be sure that people are direct, honest, and respectful. And if to me, that 3-legged stool of communication, if you are direct, honest, and respectful, you should be able to say just about anything to anybody and not have to politicize it. And so I see Rotary as an environment where you can have robust discussions, but divisiveness on any line, political and religious in particular, is just not part of our culture.
Mm-hmm. So can you give us an example of what Rotary does in some of our communities? What's a concrete example of how Rotary helps our communities, whether it's in Pequot Lakes or Bemidji or Brainerd?
Sure. You look at Bemidji as one example. Beautiful parks and playgrounds that they have set up. Absolutely beautiful. And they're working on another one now. It'll be a natural playground. Or I look at in Pequot Lakes and Pine River, there too we've built a park. We have provided a lot of dollars to an organization called Strive, which we had created. And I think you might be familiar with that, but that's students taking renewed interest in the value of education. So we as Rotarians provide mentorship, working with the Pine River High School and the Pequot Lakes High School for students that have been identified as students with potential, but perhaps they need a little extra guidance. So we arrange a series of talks on career development and how to present yourself and prepare yourself to succeed in the world. And at a successful completion of that program, they'll receive a scholarship from us. And if they attend Central Lakes College matches that scholarship. So there's a academic component, a youth relationship component. There's also many programs in every community that Rotary will use its local and district funds to help support. The end of human trafficking is one area that we've put a lot of attention to as of late, but also food shelves, helping out with the food shelf. We've done projects with Kids Against Hunger. So each community looks at what's really needed in their community, and they work to try and help address that to their ability. And in addition, we look at community initiatives beyond our borders. So there are numerous projects that are going on every day, every year within Rotary. One significant example would be just a letter I received today from my classmate down in Guatemala. He is looking for assistance because they've been hit by 2 Category 4 hurricanes 2 weeks in a row. And so we're looking at what type of relief program we can work with them on, our district as well as other districts, to come in and help with Honduras, Belize, Guatemala, Nicaragua, to not only raise awareness but also raise funds to help provide relief. So there are international projects and there are local projects, but Rotary has 6 and now actually 7 primary focuses beyond polio. I think you may have read about polio, and I mean that has been a flagship project for many years, teamed up with the World Health Organization and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But in August, it was a pretty exciting event. We now are down to just 2 countries in the world where the wild polio virus exists, and that's Afghanistan and Pakistan. So Africa in August was declared wild polio free. And to me, what's interesting in terms of looking to the future, because of COVID, our vaccine teams were not able to work in Afghanistan and Pakistan for a certain period of time. But they were already there, the infrastructure was in place, and so they teamed up with the World Health Organization to help address COVID, to start doing, identifying where the cases might have been coming from, where the hotspots were. And to me, it's a really good indication of looking long-term, Rotary's potential to continue as a world partner in addressing major issues. So they're dealing with polio, they're dealing with health issues. They have a phenomenal program, it's the Peace and Conflict Resolution Institutes. There are 7 universities in 6 countries around the world, and it's basically training for ambassadors. It's training people on peace and conflict resolution, which is a major part of Rotary's efforts. They also are looking at areas of economic development, literacy. We have water and sanitation as an issue, maternal and infant health, and then the newest one that will be officially launched in July of 2021 is the environment. And just today, again, in response to the letter I received from my classmate down in Guatemala, the environment impacts all of those areas. If I look at those 2 back-to-back hurricanes that were supercharged, rapid charged hurricanes, I mean, it's impacting their economy, it's impacting their health, it's impacting their water. Every area that Rotary is addressing, environment impacts. And so it's really appropriate that is, especially as you look at an international issue, that's become the 7th area of focus for Rotary.
Well, those are great local and international examples, and I'm glad you shared your work in the worldwide fight against polio, because I was certainly going to ask you about that. We only have a couple minutes here left, unfortunately, Bob, and one of the things I'm really interested in learning more about is, what are your goals as the newly elected district governor? What will be different within our district as a result of your leadership specifically?
Well, as you know, I'm a big fan of succession planning. And so that has been definitely part of the work that we've been doing. We have our district governor line set up through the district governor designate. So that's my successor, his successor, and that other person's successor. We have built up, I think, a very good network of committees that are helping address issues across the entire district. But I think the key one, and I give credit to a presentation I saw at my training at International Assembly, where this individual got up and he gave a presentation about M&Ms and literally used M&Ms as an example. Now, I did a modification on what he was doing, but it drove home a point to me of making membership meaningful and memorable. And I really appreciated that perspective. And the other part of it is that when you go back to your point about diversity, and I've shared this with every club visit that I've made, if you've got M&Ms and they're all blue, what's missing? If it's just blue and red, who's not at your table? And so to me, the importance is, making membership truly meaningful and memorable and addressing that element of diversity. And with that, I think you find, a vibrancy within your club, a vibrancy within your community. And if we uphold our values, if we apply the FourWay Test and we continue to recognize that, Rotary is really primarily about doing good in the world through service above self. And so, tie those together, And I think you have the opportunity for a really strong local club that can be a real asset for your community.
Well, we only have time for one more question, and I always like to try and understand the motivations of my guests to the best of my ability. There are a handful of organizations through which you could have a significant impact as an individual. Why Rotary?
Well, I would say a host of things. It started back when I was first joining Hunt Technology with Paul and Hunt. Marvelous people, very generous people. And at the time, Hunt Technology was the fastest growing technology company in the state. As you know, with Paul and Lynn, they're incredibly generous. They're remarkably smart. They are innovators, and they work very late at night. Well, Central Lakes Rotary meets at 7 in the morning. I was the only one on the executive committee that was awake to go to a Rotary meeting. That's the truth. It's absolutely the truth. And just a few months into becoming a member of Central Lakes Rotary, I was asked that dubious question, you want to be the president? and so, my wife and I decided if I'm going to be president, I should learn more about it. As luck would happen, the international conference was in San Antonio that year. So we made a family vacation out of going down to San Antonio with Terry and all 4 boys. And that really, that made a big impression on me, I think in part because of the impression it made on Terry and the boys. You were with 24,000 people and you felt you were with family. And when you go to the House of Friendship of Rotary International, it's hundreds and hundreds of booths set up, but it's not, people, professional salespeople trying to sell you something. It's people like you and me that are sharing their passion, sharing the work that they're doing in their communities, and inviting you to be a part of that. And seeing that and seeing, what a great network it was worldwide. And again, applying that 4-way test where integrity matters, where truth matters. And then on the local level, Central Lakes Rotary is just a great group of people. They are important to me and to my daily living. And so, maybe if the Lions had been campaigning or Kiwanis had been campaigning, I don't know. It might have been different. But the path that I was set on, because I woke up early in the morning, led me to, I think, a really valuable experience for myself. And I've certainly enjoyed the honor of being a part of Rotary in the roles that I've had.
Well, Bob, I'm grateful for all you've done on behalf of our local communities and our international community. And I also want to thank you for your time today very much.
It's been an honor. Thanks, Jason. Great to see you again.
Absolutely. And I want to thank all of you for joining us again. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Be kind and be well. We'll see you next week.